The wind tore through the mountains like a wild animal, whipping snow across the dark sky. Every branch, every rock, and every corner of the small wooden cabin was coated in white. Inside, the fire crackled, sending a warm glow through the tiny room. Mark, a human who had lived alone for many years, sat on a creaking chair staring at the flames. He had chosen this life of solitude after losing everything he loved. Silence had become his only friend, and yet, tonight, even the quiet seemed heavy. He wrapped his hands around his mug of steaming tea, trying to shake off the chill that seemed to seep through the walls. The snowstorm outside grew stronger, pounding against the roof and rattling the windows. He was used to it, used to being alone, but tonight something felt different. He could feel it in the air, the way the storm seemed almost alive, restless, like it was carrying something with it. A sudden knock shattered the silence. Mark's heart jumped. He wasn't expecting anyone. Not a traveler, not a neighbor, not even a wandering animal. Slowly, he walked to the door, each step heavy with uncertainty. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the handle. When he opened the door, he froze. Standing there in the middle of the storm was a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. She was tall and slender, but her skin shimmered with a soft blue light, as if tiny stars were trapped beneath it. Her eyes were golden, wide with fear, and her clothes were thin and soaked through, freezing in the bitter wind. Her long hair clung to her face, sparkling with frost. She shivered violently, almost collapsing before Mark could catch her. "Please, share your bed, or I'll freeze," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. It was strange, musical, and yet filled with desperation. Mark blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. She was an alien. She was asking him for something that no human had ever asked before. And yet, he didn't hesitate. He couldn't leave her outside, not like this. He stepped aside and let her in. The warmth from the fire hit her immediately, and she gasped as if tasting life again. Mark supported her as she staggered toward the small chair near the fireplace. The frost on her skin began to melt, turning into tiny droplets of water that glimmered in the firelight. Thank you," she said softly, shivering, her eyes not leaving his. There was something in those golden eyes that tugged at his heart. Fear, loneliness, a quiet plea for help that spoke to the part of him he had tried to ignore for so long. "Who are you?" Mark asked, his voice low. He didn't want to scare her, but his curiosity was overwhelming. "I lost my ship," she said, teeth chattering. "My people. I was separated. I didn't mean to come here. I can't survive the snow alone." Mark nodded slowly. He understood loss. He understood fear. He understood being alone in a cold world. Something inside him stirred, a part he thought had died years ago. Compassion, protection, a human need to help, to connect, to be more than just a lone survivor. The storm outside roared louder, like a warning, like the universe itself was testing him. And yet, as he looked at her shivering figure, he made a silent promise. He wouldn't let her freeze. Not here, not now, not ever. As she sat down by the fire, struggling to find warmth, Mark realized something he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't alone anymore. Not really. And for the first time in a long time, he felt the faint flicker of hope, a spark that maybe, just maybe, this strange, golden-eyed alien could change his life forever. The storm raged on outside, but inside the small cabin the fire glowed warmer than ever, and Mark's heart, long frozen by loneliness, began to thaw. The alien woman sat near the fire, her knees pulled close to her chest, shivering as the warmth slowly reached her frozen skin. Mark watched her, unsure what to do next. He had faced many storms in his life, many lonely nights, but nothing had prepared him for this. An alien being trembling in his small cabin, asking for his help. His mind raced, trying to understand her, trying to process what had just happened. Do you often come here?" he asked cautiously, still keeping a safe distance. She shook her head, tiny shivers running down her arms. "No, I travel alone. I lost my ship, my people. They are far away. I did not want to. I never wanted to be here," she whispered, her golden eyes glistening with fear. Mark felt a pang in his chest. He knew fear like that. He had lived through loneliness, through the cold, through nights that seemed endless. And now, here was someone even more alone. Someone who had no one, nowhere to go, and nothing to hold on to except him. He moved closer to the fire, trying to find the right words. "It's okay. You're safe here," he said, though the words felt weak even as he spoke them. He wasn't sure if he believed them fully himself. The storm outside was still raging, and the cabin, though warm, felt fragile against the vast wilderness surrounding them. She tilted her head, watching him carefully. You are human?" she asked softly. "Yes," he replied. "I live here alone, but I can help you." Her eyes widened slightly, a mixture of relief and disbelief. Why would you help me? You do not even know me." Mark hesitated. He wasn't used to kindness. He wasn't used to helping anyone beyond basic survival. But as he looked at her, shivering, fragile, and afraid, something inside him stirred. He thought of all the years he had spent alone, wishing someone would care, wishing someone would reach out. And now in front of him was a being who needed help. The choice was simple, even if it scared him. Because I know what it feels like to be alone," he said quietly. "And I can't leave you out there. Not tonight." She blinked, and for the first time, Mark noticed a flicker of warmth in her gaze. Not just from the fire, but something deeper, something human. She took a small step closer to him, her voice barely audible. "You are different from the others. Humans, I expected fear. But you do not run away." Mark nodded, his chest tight with emotion. "I don't run away. Not when someone needs help." For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the fire crackle and the wind howl outside. Mark could see her shivering slowly subside as warmth spread from the flames into her body. Her breathing steadied, and her golden eyes lost a bit of the wild fear they had carried. I do not know how to repay you," she said, her voice trembling. "In my world, humans are not like you. You risk everything to help me." Mark shook his head. "You don't need to repay me. Just survive. That's enough." Her eyes softened, almost tender, as if she were seeing him for the first time. Not as a human, not as a stranger, but as someone who cared. She moved slightly closer to the fire, letting the warmth touch her skin. I did not think anyone would care. Not here. Not in this cold place." He watched her carefully, realizing that in this tiny cabin amidst the storm and snow, a fragile bond was forming, a connection neither of them expected. And for the first time in years, Mark felt a strange sense of purpose, a sense of responsibility that made his heart beat faster, not from fear but from hope. Outside, the snowstorm continued, fierce and merciless, but inside, something gentler began to grow, a silent understanding, a fragile trust, and the faintest flicker of warmth between two beings who had never truly known kindness. Until tonight, the alien woman's body still trembled, even as the fire warmed her frozen skin. Mark watched her carefully, his mind filled with a strange mix of fear, curiosity, and concern. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, so fragile yet so strangely strong in her own way. Her golden eyes held stories he could not imagine, stories of worlds far beyond the mountains, beyond the snow, beyond human understanding. "Do you have a place to sleep?" she asked softly, almost ashamed. Mark hesitated. His cabin was small. He had one bed, a worn blanket, and barely enough room for himself. Sharing it with her was risky. It was unfamiliar, uncomfortable, and yet he could not imagine saying no, not now. Not when she looked like she might freeze to death if he turned away. You can stay," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "But you need to promise me you won't, hurt anything here." Her lips curved into a faint smile, almost shy. I promise. I only want warmth. And your help." Mark nodded and moved a small chair closer to the bed. He helped her settle in, awkwardly at first, giving her space. Her body was still icy, and she flinched when his hand brushed hers. But slowly, ever so slowly, she began to relax, letting the warmth from his body seep into hers. For the first time, they sat together in silence, sharing the small space. The storm outside battered the cabin, snow piling high against the walls, but inside there was a fragile peace. Mark watched her breathing, saw the tension in her shoulders ease, and felt an odd sense of responsibility. This alien being, lost and afraid, was now relying on him for survival. And he would not fail. I never expected kindness from humans," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "In my world, humans are unpredictable, dangerous, but you helped me." Mark shrugged, feeling awkward. "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but I know what it feels like to be alone. I couldn't leave you out there." Her golden eyes glimmered, and for a moment Mark thought he saw something almost like gratitude. Or maybe hope. You are brave, she murmured. Most would have. Ignored me, he shook his head. Not me. I don't leave people behind, even if they aren't human. The fire crackled between them, and slowly she moved a little closer, seeking warmth, seeking comfort. Mark felt a strange sensation he hadn't felt in years. A connection, a shared understanding, something beyond words. Her body, still faintly glowing from her alien energy, seemed to accept his human warmth, and he felt pride, fear, and wonder all at once. Outside, the storm raged, relentless and merciless, but inside a fragile bond was forming. They sat in silence, hearts beating in their own rhythms, learning trust without needing to speak. Mark could feel her fear fading, replaced by cautious curiosity, and he felt his own walls, built from years of solitude, slowly begin to crumble. You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't think anyone could care. Not even a human. Mark's heart ached at her words. "I don't know if I care the way you think," he said softly. "But I couldn't let you freeze. Not like this. Not ever." She looked at him then, truly looked, golden eyes shining in the firelight, and he saw trust, fragile but real. For the first time, Mark realized that warmth was more than fire, it was connection. It was the feeling of someone relying on you, believing in you, letting you matter. And tonight he mattered, she mattered. As the night deepened and the storm raged on outside, Mark and the alien woman shared the warmth of the fire and, more importantly, the warmth of each other. Two lonely souls from two different worlds, finding comfort in the cold, finding hope where there had been none. And in that small cabin, surrounded by snow and ice, something beautiful began, something human, something alien, something that neither of them could yet name, but both felt deeply in their hearts. The night deepened and the storm outside grew stronger, like a wild beast scratching at the walls of Mark's tiny cabin. The wind howled, shaking the roof and rattling the windows, but inside, the fire glowed warmly, casting flickering shadows across the walls. The alien woman sat on the bed, her thin body slowly thawing from the cold. Yet despite the warmth, a nervous tension lingered in the air, something Mark could not ignore. She hugged her knees closer, her golden eyes wide as she stared at the fire. I can feel it coming back," she whispered softly. "The cold, the fear, it never truly leaves me." Mark frowned, moving closer. "It's okay. You're safe here," he said, though the words felt fragile against the howl of the storm outside. He had no idea how long the alien woman could survive in the cold before finding safety. He only knew he had to keep her alive. Her shivering grew worse, and she tucked herself deeper under the thin blanket. "Your warmth. It keeps me alive," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Without it, I would not last the night." Mark swallowed hard. Hearing her rely on him so openly made something in his chest tighten. He was not used to being needed, not like this. For years he had lived in silence, avoiding others, avoiding responsibility. But now here was a life, fragile and strange, depending entirely on him. And he would not fail. Suddenly a loud bang against the door made both of them jump. The cabin shook and the fire flickered wildly. Mark grabbed a nearby flashlight, heart racing. Outside, something heavy was moving in the snow, knocking against the walls. His pulse pounded. "What is it?" she whispered, clutching the blanket to her chest. I don't know," he admitted, trying to keep his voice steady. "Stay behind me." They moved toward the window together. Through the frost, glowing eyes reflected in the darkness, moving slowly around the cabin. Wolves? No. Bigger. Not natural. Their low growls sounded intelligent, almost calculating. Mark's grip on the flashlight tightened. "They are after me," the alien woman said, voice barely a whisper. "I think they want to take me back." Mark's eyes narrowed. He did not understand entirely what she meant, but he felt the danger as clearly as if it were a knife at his throat. He stepped in front of her, holding the flashlight like a weapon. "Not if I can stop them," he said. His voice sounded braver than he felt. The creatures outside circled, growling, clawing at the snow. Mark's hand shook slightly, but he did not retreat. Every instinct told him to survive, to run, to protect himself, but he refused. He would not abandon her, not now. Not ever. The alien woman's hand touched his arm, trembling. "Human, you fight for me?" she whispered. I don't leave people behind," Mark said firmly. He swung the branch he had grabbed at a creature that leapt close to the window. The beast recoiled, its glowing eyes narrowing, unsure. He yelled, shouted, and swung again. The creatures hesitated, confused by the courage of this single human standing between them and the alien life they wanted to reclaim. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the creatures vanished into the storm. Silence returned, broken only by the howl of the wind. Mark's heart pounded furiously. He was alive, and so was she. The alien woman looked at him, eyes wide, shimmering with disbelief. You risked yourself. For me? She asked, voice trembling. Mark nodded, chest tight with emotion. I didn't leave you out there. I couldn't. She reached out, barely touching his hand, her golden eyes full of awe. Human, I never expected this. I never expected someone like you. Mark felt warmth spread through him, deeper than any fire could give. Tonight he had done more than survive. Tonight he had fought for someone else. Tonight he realized something he had not felt in years. Being human was not just about living. It was about caring, risking, and protecting. Outside, the storm continued, relentless and cold. Inside, 2 lives had been tested, 2 hearts had connected, and a fragile trust had been forged that neither snow nor darkness, nor fear could break. The storm had finally calmed a little, but the night was still dark and silent, broken only by the occasional creak of the cabin as the wind shifted outside. Mark sat on the edge of the bed, flashlight still in hand, eyes scanning the snow-covered landscape. He could feel the alien woman's presence behind him, tense but trusting, a fragile bond forming between them in the midst of fear. They might come back, she whispered, her golden eyes wide. They are patient. They always return for what they want. Mark swallowed hard. He didn't fully understand what kind of beings were out there, but he understood danger, and he understood responsibility. He had promised himself he wouldn't leave her. Not now. Not ever. They won't take you, he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. I'll make sure of it. Her gaze softened slightly, and for the first time that night she allowed herself a small, fragile smile. Human, you are strange, yet strong. I did not expect anyone to fight for me. Mark shrugged, feeling awkward. I don't leave people behind, even if they aren't human. They listened to the silence together, both aware that it could be broken at any moment. And then movement. A shadow darted past the frosted window. Mark's heart skipped a beat. The creatures were back, bigger than wolves, glowing eyes gleaming like embers in the dark. Their growls were low, intelligent, and terrifying. They are after me, the alien woman whispered again. I think they want to bring me back to my people. Against my will. Mark's hands tightened around the flashlight and the thick wooden branch he had grabbed earlier. Fear surged through him, but it did not overpower his resolve. This life, fragile and golden-eyed, depended on him. He would not fail. They won't get you, he said firmly. I will protect you. Just stay close. The creatures circled the cabin like hunters, testing their patience. Mark's mind raced. There was no escape outside, no chance to outrun them. He had to fight, and he had to fight smart. He moved to the doorway, positioning himself between the alien woman and the outside. Stay behind me, he ordered, voice low but steady. She obeyed without question, her trust in him absolute. That trust made something in Mark's chest ache and strengthen all at once. The creatures lunged at the door, claws scraping against the wood. Mark swung his branch with all his strength, yelling to startle them. The creatures paused, their glowing eyes narrowing in confusion and fear. He took a deep breath and struck again, shouting until his voice cracked, showing courage he didn't fully feel. Minutes passed like hours, but eventually, the creatures retreated into the darkness, disappearing into the snowstorm. Silence returned, heavy but safe. Mark dropped the branch, trembling, his chest heaving. The alien woman slowly rose from the bed, eyes wide and shining. You fought for me. You risked yourself. To save me? Her voice trembled with awe, fear, and gratitude all at once. I couldn't leave you out there, Mark said softly, feeling warmth flood his chest in spite of the cold. Not after everything. She reached out a hand, barely brushing his arm, and he felt a strange pulse of connection, deeper than the physical warmth of the fire. Human. I did not expect this. I never expected anyone to care like you do. Mark looked at her, seeing not just fear, but hope, relief, and a fragile spark of trust. He realized something profound. Being human wasn't just about survival. It was about risking for others, protecting those who could not protect themselves, and finding courage even in the coldest, darkest moments. For a long moment, they simply stood there side by side, the quiet of the cabin surrounding them, their breaths mingling with the soft glow of the fire. Outside, the snow lay thick and silent. Inside, two hearts, one human, one alien, had been tested, had fought, and had begun to understand each other in ways words could never fully express. Mark realized then that tonight was not just a fight against the storm or the creatures. It was a fight for connection, for trust, and for something bigger than himself. And he had won. Morning arrived slowly, painting the snow outside in soft shades of pink and gold. The storm had passed, leaving the world blanketed in silence and light. Mark sat by the window, watching the snow glisten, feeling the exhaustion of the night still lingering in his muscles. Beside him, the alien woman stirred, slowly coming awake, her golden eyes blinking against the sunlight streaming into the cabin. She shivered lightly, but no longer from the cold. Instead, her movements carried a gentle curiosity, a fragile wonder at surviving the storm. It is morning," she whispered, her voice still soft but steadier than last night. "The cold? It has not claimed me," Mark gave a tired smile. "No, you made it. You're safe." She looked at him then, really looked, and he felt the weight of her gaze. Her eyes, golden and bright, were filled with emotions he could barely name. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper. "Human. Why?" she asked quietly. "Why did you protect me? Why did you risk yourself?" Mark paused. He didn't have a simple answer. "Because I could not leave you alone," he admitted. "I've known loneliness. I've known cold nights, and I know what it feels like to need someone. I couldn't just watch you freeze." Her golden eyes softened, shimmering like sunlight on the snow. I never expected kindness like this. Not from a human. Not from anyone." She hesitated, then added softly, "You saved me, not just from the cold, from fear, from despair." Mark's chest tightened. Her words, simple as they were, carried weight deeper than he had felt in years. All his solitude, all his self-imposed distance from the world melted slightly under the warmth of her gratitude. He realized that last night had not only been a fight for her survival, it had been a test of humanity, of courage, and of trust. They sat together in silence, letting the morning light fill the cabin. The alien woman moved slightly closer to the fire, letting the warmth seep into her skin, and Mark watched her carefully, marveling at the strange beauty of her being. She was so different, yet so fragile and human-like in her need for care, for protection, for trust. You could have left me," she whispered, almost in disbelief. "Anyone else would have left me to die in the snow." "I couldn't," Mark said softly. "Even if you aren't human, you mattered. That's enough for me." For a long moment, they simply shared the quiet, broken only by the gentle crackle of the fire. The fear from last night lingered faintly, but it was fading, replaced by a fragile trust that was new and wonderful. The alien woman studied him, her golden eyes searching his, and for the first time, Mark felt something shift inside him, an unfamiliar warmth, a sense of connection, and hope that perhaps he was no longer truly alone. You are different from all humans I have met," she said finally. You care, you risk for others, you fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." Mark smiled faintly, feeling both pride and awkwardness. "I don't know if I'm different," he admitted. "I just couldn't leave you behind. That's all." Her gaze softened further. "Even so, I trust you now. Not completely, but enough. Enough to believe you will not harm me, not ever." Mark nodded, his heart light despite the exhaustion of the night. "And I won't," he promised. "I will do everything I can to keep you safe." The morning light filled the cabin, touching both of them in a gentle embrace. Outside, the snow sparkled, quiet and beautiful. Inside, two beings, one human, one alien, sat together, bound by a fragile trust, shared warmth, and the realization that even in a vast and cold universe, kindness and courage could forge connections stronger than fear or distance. And in that quiet morning, Mark understood something profound. Survival was more than living, it was protecting, caring and daring to connect with someone who needed you. And for the first time in years, he felt hope stir in his heart, small but bright, like the sunlight on the snow. The snow outside had melted slightly under the morning sun, revealing a world fresh and bright after the storm. Mark stood near the doorway, watching the alien woman as she adjusted to the warmth and light. Her golden eyes reflected wonder and cautious hope. She moved slowly, still fragile from the night's cold, yet stronger than she had been when she first arrived. I should find my people, she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of sadness and determination. But I will never forget you, human. You saved me. Mark nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. He had spent so many years alone, believing that nothing mattered, that no one would ever need him or care for him. Yet here she was, an alien being, a life he had protected, a soul that had trusted him completely. And I won't forget you either, he said quietly. You stay alive. That's all I ask. She took a hesitant step toward him, her hand brushing his arm lightly. Human. I never expected someone to care for me. Not like this. You showed me warmth, not just from fire, but from your heart. Mark felt warmth spread through his chest, deeper than the fire, deeper than the sunlit snow. He realized then that being human was not just about survival, not just about enduring loneliness. It was about reaching out, risking and loving in small, courageous ways. He had done more than protect a life. He had proven that humanity could rise above fear, above isolation, above cold indifference. I can't stay, she said, voice soft but steady. But is maybe one day I can return to see the human who risked everything to save me. Mark smiled faintly, a mixture of pride, hope, and sorrow. I'll be here, he said simply. No matter what happens, I'll be here. The alien woman turned toward the forest, her shimmering blue skin catching the sunlight as she began to walk toward the edge of the snow-covered trees. Mark watched, silent, feeling both the sting of goodbye and the strange glowing warmth of fulfillment. He had faced fear, he had faced unknown danger, and he had stood for something greater than himself. That was the true measure of humanity. She paused, looking back over her shoulder. Human, you are. Different, brave, kind, true. I hope your world knows more like you. I hope so too, Mark whispered, watching her silhouette disappear into the forest, fading into the sunlight and snow. The cabin felt empty suddenly, quieter than it had ever been. But Mark did not feel lonely. Not really. Something had changed in him. He had risked, he had protected, and he had connected with another being in a way that transcended worlds. That connection, that courage was something no storm, no isolation, no distance could ever erase. He walked back inside, sitting near the fire, staring at the spot where she had slept. The warmth lingered, both from the fire and from the memory of her trust. Mark knew that life would go on, that the snow would continue to fall and the storms would rage. But he also knew that in the vast universe, humans had something unique, the courage to care, to protect, to risk for others even when it seemed impossible. And in that moment, Mark felt a profound sense of purpose, a quiet but unshakable hope. He had proven that even a single human could make a difference. That kindness and bravery were not just stories, they were real, alive and transformative. The sun climbed higher, melting the last of the frost, and Mark stood by the window looking out at the world. Somewhere in that snowy wilderness, the alien woman would continue her journey. But he knew this. She carried with her the proof that humanity could rise above fear, that even in the coldest and darkest nights, warmth and courage could shine. Mark smiled, a soft, quiet smile that carried all the weight of hope and triumph. The universe was vast and often cruel, but humanity, his humanity, had made a mark tonight. He had saved a life, forged a connection, and proven that compassion and courage could reach even across worlds. And in that, he found peace.